Welcome to the Carnegie Conference Centre. Thank you all for coming out such a dreadful evening. I don't think I've seen such rain for I don't know how long. Just I should have had an amphibious vehicle coming up the motorway. I'm Julian Smith, and before we start, can I just do one or two housekeeping things? I hope you've all registered your names at the door. We need that in case of a fire and people get lost. If you aren't in the habit of getting MailChimp emails from me about meetings, then I've asked for, if you want them, to put your email address, but otherwise the email column was supposed to be left blank. Fire exits, there shouldn't be any fire drill this evening, but the fire exits from this room are there, there. And if you happen to be out in the foyer where the alarm goes up, there's fire doors going out that direction, out of the foyer. I'm very pleased to welcome RobinMcAlpine, who's Director of Common Weal, as I'm sure everybody knows. He doesn't really need any introduction. Common Weal have produced numerous reports on aspects of independence. I've got a list of them from the library of Common Weal, and they are very much worthwhile having a look at online. Each of them has a kind of executive summary, which is very helpful if you haven't got time to read through the whole document. We're engaged in a continuous project, the White Paper project, and this is very much a work in progress. This is, again, it's downloadable. There are parts of it which are complete and parts of it which are still to be worked on. And it's, as I say, ongoing, and there'll be various updates to it. RobinMcAlpine is going to speak about this White Paper project and about issues regarding a second referendum. The plan is that he'll speak for about half an hour, and then we'll have a short comfort break. The toilets are just outside that door there, and there are others further towards the door you came in from the outside. 10 minutes. There's coffee in a machine, but I haven't laid on coffee to be served. But there's coffee in a machine for pound coin. Donations, please, if you have any, are in tins at the pockets at the back of the room there. And there's one or two bits of pieces of merchandise that you can help yourself to, or donate money if there are any t-shirts left. There are only one or two left anyway, and there's one or two flags as well. So without more ado and speech from me, can I ask you to welcome RobinMcAlpine?
Right, okay, I'm supposed to talk for half an hour, always over talk, there's an awful lot to get through, I'm going to be extremely businesslike. Feel free at any point, if anything doesn't make sense, just to interrupt me and say, could you say that again, or clarify what you're saying here. And if anyone's here to be persuaded, apologies, I'm assuming you all want Scottish independence. I sure as hell do, and I'm determined that we win it this time, and that's what I want to talk to you about, is winning this. Because the first thing to say is that we're now in a point where, depending who you ask, we may be comparatively close to a referendum. Depending who you talk to, we can be startlingly close to a referendum. Let me suggest, I don't think we're quite as close as some people imagine. The first reason for this is that I don't think Westminster's going to give us one voluntarily before Brexit's negotiated. Which would leave us in a position where the Scottish Government would have to run an advisory poll. But I think we've seen in recent constitutional history in Britain that that's not going to happen without a High Court challenge. And a High Court challenge would drag that down for 6 months anyway. But to any of your SNP in the room who talk to people in your party, I would urge, irrespective of the fact that I think we need a bit more preparatory time than going sometime in 2018. 2019, okay. I think 2018 is pushing it a bit tight, but there's another element to this which I would just mention as well, which is there is an impeccable democratic case for not holding the referendum until we know the outline of the Brexit deal. which is to say, if you're asking the public to make a decision between two choices, asking them to make that decision before we know what one of the choices is, you can make a very strong democratic case for that. And I would urge anybody who thinks that we should push this to go before the Brexit shake takes place, is do not give Theresa May the high ground over the timing of a referendum. And I really think if we go in and we say, no, we want the referendum now, and we don't care what the Brexit deal is, they're going to come over reasonable. Right, that's just timing. So let me just say that towards the end of 2018 or sometime in 2019 now appears to be where the wise money is going in a referendum. And all I can say to that is, oh geez, I mean, that's soon. I mean, we're already well into the last referendum period, if that's the timescales. So this is us, from last time, we're within 18 months, 2 years of when this is going to kick off. And that was the whole show last time. That was it start to finish. So where are we? And what do we need to do to win? So what I'm going to do tonight is try and talk, I think, and I do mean I think, because this has been a bracing experience for me. I've sat down and thought, oh my God, this is coming really fast. And I am personally absolutely determined that we win it this time. And I am not in the mood for crossing my fingers or hoping it's going to be okay. So I obsessively go through every element of this in my head again and again and again. And it means that I can talk almost indefinitely about this stuff, and I do not today. So what I think I'm going to talk about is, first of all, the broadsheet of the strategy that gets us there, the core parts of that strategy which enable us to get across and to do the core elements of the strategy, what this means on the ground for the movement for you in individual places, and what the structures might be at a national level for all of this stuff. And that'll probably be as much as I manage, but I do also want to, and I hope we get into this in conversation, in questions, because we lack information. We lack a lot of information in the movement. It bothers me, and I should mention as well that my day job, my background is as a political strategist. And as a political strategist, you want to know things. And an awful lot of the things that I want to know, I don't know. And it's not because somebody knows them and isn't telling me. We lack data in Scotland on the independence movement. We don't know enough about motivations. And I've been asking a lot of people, and incidentally I should say that my email address is robin@common.scot. Please email me thoughts or ideas on any of these things afterwards if you don't get a chance to mention them or things come to you afterwards, because I'm trying to learn from the experiences of people who are out there, and particularly from people who've been engaged with particular demographic groups, because I'm finding quite widely varying messages and experiences that are coming out of some of these different demographic groups at the moment, and I'll probably pick up on that as well. But let me do the basics. I wrote a book earlier this year, which was about how to get to an independence referendum, which was predicated on there not being a Brexit. Grrr, ruined that for me. But most of the book still stacks. The part of the book was about how to trigger a referendum, and it looks like that's not an issue anymore. It looks like events are going to create a trigger. So the question is, how do you win it? But the large part of that remains. The large part of my personal analysis of why we didn't win the last time, there's two primary reasons. One was just flat out, straightforward lack of time. It's worth remembering at this stage that the SNP, for very legitimate reasons, took a strategy from about the late 90s until about the independence referendum of mainly presenting itself as a devolved government in Scotland, an effective devolved government, and slightly de-emphasising, in fact almost entirely de-emphasising the independence bit, which didn't look like it was happening anyway. So it is worth remembering that come 2011 we hadn't had a discussion about independence for a decade. Wasn't really a subject that was discussed much. I increasingly wonder if there's any version of the referendum which in the space of effectively 3 years from start to finish could have taken people from a cold start, which it was for a lot of people. For a lot of people, independence was a cold start through to winning. So I think the timescales was one problem, and it's incidentally, I'll come out a couple of times. It's my frustration that we didn't maintain a national level campaign after the last referendum. We've got into a sort of a habit, it seems, like people think that the moment when you change people's minds is during referendums, and that's an error. You change people's minds all the time, and we've not been doing that. So we kind of gave up on making and developing a case for independence. So I think it was going to be difficult flat out. But I think that the biggest single fundamental barrier that we had last time was to do with confidence. Now let me explain that for a second, because it's really important. When I encourage people to think of the confidence trick, the con trick. And a lot of people think that the function of a con trick is about the gullibility of the mark of the person that's tricked in a con trick. But it's not called a gullibility trick. You've missed the point here. The point about a confidence trick is almost anyone is susceptible to it. There's virtually nobody in the world who cannot be conned. You really have to want nothing to be immune to the con. Because the way that con works is on the basis of confidence. There is extensive work in the field of political strategy, advertising, marketing, but also in social psychology, that there's almost nothing you can't get people to do if you ask them to do it with sufficient confidence. So there's a piece of research which was quite important a few years ago, where they got empty train carriages with one person sitting in them. And a sociologist, a researcher would come in, but they would dressed in some sort of form of gear, not the official train gear, but some form of uniform. And they would walk into a person sitting in a carriage on their own and say, "That's my seat, move." Most people get up and leave. The majority of people get up and go if somebody that looks authoritative tell them to do it. Because we do tend to work on the basis of believing people who exude confidence. It's the whole basis of advertising and marketing as well. And one of the problems that we had last time round was that we didn't have sufficient material to be persuasively confident. Now, I refer to this, and I want to be clear what I'm saying here. I think the Windsor of Scotland did an incredibly important job during the last referendum, and we'd have been lost without the Wee Blue Book. But the Wee Blue Book was how to answer questions that we don't have proper answers for. Now, I mean that in the best possible way. That's what you have to do when you don't have a proper answer. But we spent too much of the time last time using parallels, analogies, historical precedents, rather than having specific answers. So, what currency will you use? It was absolutely right to say that there are many countries around the world that use many different currency options, and some of them change as we go along, and whatever happens, you can be absolutely sure that we will be able to maintain a currency in Scotland. Right, that's true. But did that sound confident to you? And this is the problem. So, when I try to think about this, I try to emphasise this to people. What I say is, imagine what happens if you go to a television programme, radio interview, and the interviewer asks you a question, and you answer that question briefly, concisely, authoritatively, and to the point, comprehensively. That's the last time you'll ever hear that question in your life. You will not be asked that question again. Television isn't made for people sitting down giving camp, confident, authoritative answers. Sit down and give a bluff answer, or a parallel answer, or an aphorism, or any of those kinds of bits and pieces, you will be asked that question every time you go back into a studio. So, what my fundamental view in this was there were too many holes in the case last time. And if we're just honest about that, it's true. We didn't do a lot of the work. We couldn't. There's a good reason for that. It came up on us so fast. There was a 4-year window to hold that referendum from start to finish, and given that 2 years of it was campaigning and a year of it was set up, there was barely a year to put the case together. That is not the case now. We have had time to put the case together properly for the next time, and I don't think we've done enough of it. I'll come back to that. And so you understand, what I'm saying here is not that I think that we should deal with the question of cross-border customs tariffs, because that's what people want to talk about on the doorstep. I don't think we need to deal with cross-border customs tariffs because we want to talk about them at all. I specifically believe we have to deal with cross-border customs tariffs so we never have to talk about them again. That's the aim. The aim is to have as much of this part of the case dealt with in a way that an intelligent, sensible, international observer would say, yes, that works. So, if I want to give the example that I think was the most important thing I heard on referendum day, and it was at night and it was in the BBC, and it was before the results came in, and the panel of punters who were kind of commenting as they fell in the tide as things happened. And I think it was Nick Robbins, I can't remember, was asking questions of this guy. Now, from his accent, I'm pretty sure he's first generation middle class, working class background. He was a small business owner, he was in his 50s. And he was asked about the case and how he voted, so I voted no. And he said, and they said, and why? It was just because I think the case was right, I didn't think the currency rate, I didn't think they were right about it, I didn't think that enough of the planning done, it just wasn't a good case. And he talked about this, and I was listening to him, God, it's like verbatim, the better together line, he's absorbed it all, and he's saying it all. And then, I think it was Nick Robinson said to him, right, so you're a unionist? And he said, like, oh no, he says, I'd love to live in an independent Scotland, but this wasn't it. Now, I maintain that if you look at the data, which is the data we should be working from, in the 2011 census, 64% of people resident in Scotland described themselves as Scottish only or Scottish mainly. Now that's a win. Anyone else in the world, any political strategist looking at that is saying an independence movement is going to win. So what was the gap? What happened to that 15% who see themselves as Scots mainly or only but didn't vote? My contention is a lot of them thought they were going to get a second shot. And I think this was important. I think there was a sheer clear sense in a lot of people that this was probably not the only independence referendum they were getting in their life. And so if they voted no, it wasn't the end of the show. I also think that a lot of people were just genuinely not confident. We weren't sure in the case sufficiently that they were going to do it, that they were going to say okay. And this is the first thing that I think we need to do. I think we need to ensure that there's an underlying confidence in literally everything we do as the independence movement. I don't want to get caught out anymore. I don't want to have questions that we don't have answers to, and I don't want those answers to be political answers. I don't want them to be spin-style answers. I want short, serious, technical answers that work. So that's the why we started doing the white paper stuff. I'm going to say a couple of times a bit of frustration about the last 2 years. The political parties absolutely understand that they had to go back and do what political parties do, which is fight constant streams of elections. And the movement lost its coordinating voice. There was no place where the movement was talking together. Nobody has driven this kind of work. And I got to say that I was starting to annoy people by saying, we've got to get going, we've got to get going, we've got to get going. And that was back in January 2015. People were exhausted, and I maybe went too early there. But we've got to get going, we've got to get going now. We're a year and a half potentially away from a referendum, and we still don't have a currency plan. And that's not good enough. And if we go into this referendum next time ill-prepped, I will be fuming. Because the last time we had no option, and this time it would be our choice to go out ill-prepped. So we need to prep and we need to get that done, and that's the first stage. I really, really wanted to do this as a collective movement. It would have been hard. We'd have had different groups in there with different political perspectives. It would have been a lot of trade-offs, it would have been a lot of fighting and horse trading, the whole work. But we would have got somewhere eventually, like we did with the Claim of Right and with the plan for the Scottish Constitutional Convention's plan for the Scottish Parliament. We'd have got there. And we'd have got there with something that was shared by everybody. That wasn't where we were going, and that's why we kicked off the White Paper project, which I will try and come and talk to in a minute. I think I'll actually leave that at the end, because I've suddenly realised I can talk about that far too much, and I'm already almost out of time. I have rather few. But it wasn't happening, so we just decided, right, to hell with it, we'll do prep work. It's not what I wanted to do, but it's what we could do. And I'll come on to the prep work and how that's going, because I have found it the most enlightening thing just about that I've ever done in my life. It's been wonderful. In an incredibly geek kind of way. I'll tell you about that in a second. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we've got to do is get a campaign prepared and together. Now in this, I'm also going to express a little bit of frustration. We have this most glorious movement. I still get phones from places all over the world who want to know about Scotland 2014. That amazing thing that happened when ordinary people took their destiny in their own hands and campaigned in a way that hasn't happened in anywhere apart from possibly Iceland, to some extent maybe Spain, bits of Latin America. But we are a global poster, I can't say poster boy, can I? Poster person. We're a global poster person for a new kind of politics, and it was brilliant. And I loved it. But as a political strategist, I've still got a little bit of knuckle dragger in me. And one of the things that bothered me is that while we were out there being beautiful, Better Together was out there being thuggish. And unfortunately, ugly works sometimes. So we were doing whiskeys, and they polled to discover that everybody over 65 was feared. So they phoned them all and told them they were going to lose their pensions. And that was just about enough to lose it. Now, this is why this time round, I want to stay beautiful. I think we need to be a beautiful movement. I think the tone that we carried the last time was essential. I think we need to carry that this time. Just maybe occasionally having some knuckle dusters under our big furry gloves would be a good idea as well. And what's frustrating me is basic things that I would like to know, that I would like to understand, we don't have data for. We do not know. And I have asked some people in the SNP, and I don't think this large-scale polling has been done by anybody. So to give you an example, what was the voting pattern of women who work in the public sector on salaries between, say, 25 and 45,000? See, in my head, that should be a core demographic for the yes movement. Women, public sector, medium range salary, they should be people we're winning. I have a feeling we did less well in that demographic than we probably should have, but I don't know. Can't tell you for sure, but anecdotes and bits and pieces. And we don't have this information. And the lack of this information makes it very difficult to be conclusive. And for me, if I can just be elitist in expert class for a second, one of the things about the movement is because of its beauty and its self-developed, bluntly amateurism, we sometimes think these things are a matter of opinion. And partly they are, but not really. And I do want to emphasise that if you go around the world, successful winning campaigns do certain things. They drill down very carefully to understand the people they want to talk to. We've been bad for evangelising, which is great, but evangelising without more sensitivity to the person you're evangelising to is less effective than if you're more sensitive to the person that you're evangelising to. And we didn't have that level of detail. I say it again, I can remember sitting in a cafe in Glasgow about 3-4 months ago with a number of senior folk from the kind of Indian movements, and we were just saying, God, I think we've got a problem with women, older women. And I'm like, God, it's late to discover that. How are we sitting here now saying, oh God, I think we've got a problem with older women? I remember the Generation Yes people had a cracking idea, which was get every young person that supports independence to go and talk to their granny. And they're trying to put that together in the last 2 weeks. That's not good enough. We will lose if we do that again. So we need to start doing this kind of detailed campaign development stuff. And yes, it's technical. And yes, I know a lot of you think that focus groups are the work of the devil. They're not. Focus groups are only the work of the devil if you follow them. Focus groups are not going to follow. Focus groups are going to tell you things. And I want to know more about why no voters voted the way they did and why soft yes voters made it over. How did we get them? How did we switch? And we don't know enough. And one of the groups, for example, I'm finding most interesting at the moment is women over 55, 60, that kind of category. Because I've been asking a lot of them about what they feel is going on. It's the group of people that we appear to have lost most since the last referendum. We have. The voting among that group for yes is halved. And I have a number of reasons. I don't think we understood that group properly in the first place. So for example, I did this up in, what was it? I can't remember, I did this somewhere else. And afterwards there was a group of retired women who cornered me and said, you don't understand this. And I said, why? What do we not understand? And what they said was, it wasn't that we were afraid of losing the pension because of destitution. It was the other way around. The pension was the first time in our entire lives that we had economic independence from a man. It was a symbol of our post-war era coming true.
Well, I'd just like to check an alternative fact. If you just put out that 55-year-old group and it's halved, but there's no poll anywhere that's said that any of the voting groups have halved in their support for this.
If you pull together all the available polls, we did this in the reports on the website, allisfirst.org and in the library, We took aggregates of all the poles where we could do tracking poles. I've explained this in a tiny amount of detail. It's quite difficult, and we had to make some assumptions because there's some big poles that you can't track because they were just done once, and so we don't know the process, and there's some smaller poles that move across. Okay, that's right. But the best evidence that we've got suggests that in the tracking poles that are there, and what I accept as a small sample size, we are seeing the sharpest drop off in votes among the two groups which we appear to be losing are women over 55 and Brexit supporting working class yes voters.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You've got a 50% hope there that when you back your facts on time.
Well, I'll be this to a data analyst and you can have a look at the thing. Please, like I say, you've got my email address, send me that, I think it's wrong. And what I was going to say from that though is, having therefore got to that point and had a couple of conversations, a relative of mine who is a yes voting retired woman has said, yes I know, but she's actually hoping there's not another referendum. And I said, why? I said, because my peer group, it was hard the last time. I was the only one in my group, literally in sewing bee, which is in a sewing bee. I was the only independent supporter. And it was really tough for me for a year to be the only one. And it was really hard, I don't want to be there again. And it's one of the possibilities that there is this peer pressure group, but we need to know more. That's my whole argument. We need to find more about why these things are happening. And that will help us inform things. And I'm going to jump a little bit in the order I was going to do this to see. And this is one of the things, another mistake I think we made, was to lose the geographical cover. Because there's a whole other range of qualitative stuff I would like to see us gathering very quickly. And this will probably instantly, you'll probably instantly feel this. I go to a number of places who say, yes, but we have a very specific local factor. And I say, right, okay, what is it? So for example, I was doing this last week and someone was saying, well, we had 2 or 3 employers in this area, which were the majority employers who very seriously warned their staff to vote no. Now, we need to know things like this. We need to know this in a fairly granular detail. We need to know where is it that we have monopolistic employers, main employers in the area, who are putting pressure on people. How are they putting pressure on people? What impact is it having? How do we counter it? I think if we counter it, we need to pass a law saying that it is illegal for an employer to ever seek to influence your vote. Stop and think about it. Imagine if your employer said to you, right, okay, I'm just going to tell you now you can't be Catholic anymore. Or if somebody said to you, no, I'm sorry, you can't be in here and be gay anymore. How the hell is it okay for an employer to say, okay, now you can't be a yes supporter? It would be an outrage in any other personal decision.
Robin, there's a company doing like Masters Radio who are obviously involved in arms and Israel. And I know a number of people who worked there who wanted to vote yes. They were told that they would lose their job and vote no. They were pressurised every week by people within the company and senior management.
And this happened, and when I
as well.
Yeah, one of my local areas, I had people who went canvassing, and they were knocking doors, and people were knocking the doors, and they were whispering to them, I think I'm someone, oh yes, but I can't talk to you. Because there was one major employer in the area, everyone was employed there, and they were virtually encouraged to keep an eye on each other, make sure nobody was voting yes. Now this is my point. We have way sufficient capacity to gather local information like this. Where were our problems? What were the things that didn't work? And I can tell you from another example, and again I'm going into some strategy stuff here. I feel like I'm going moving fast enough, I'm trying to speed up. For my money, in my area, we are a rural area, and it's a lot of rural, Tory-ish or small C conservative. But there's a whole host of smaller bits within that overall area which are genuinely flat out working class poor. Now, a good campaign would have got the radical independence leaflets to them, because that was the leaflets that were targeted to them. But we didn't. We got that radical indie leaflets to the big estates in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Dundee and to some extent Aberdeen, but we didn't get them out to the rural areas. We should be sitting by now with a plan for every single area in Scotland which identifies the social profile of every single housing estate, every single street, every single area, so that when the time comes and somebody says which leaflets are we putting into which areas, we know. We know who, where, for example, I know there's another area close to me which was very sympathetic with the problem that there was a very strong Masonic element to the town. I mean, pubs, the Masons, they're still a very active Masonic group there. And that's the kind of thing
that it's really useful to know working class, but we've got a problem with that area, and the problem with that area is. So what I would like to see done, I'd like to have seen this done by now, is to get the full network of all yes groups with 100% Scotland coverage, and I'd like to send you all off to do full detailed area plans of your own. Tell us everything that we need to know about your area, and in the process finding out everything that you need to know about your area yourself. Some places are better than others. Some places have got SNP groups in particular which have got much better coverage, but I'm going to warn that my experience is that that's overstated. The SNP, and again for SNP members, I'm not trying to rough, but the SNP's got a very good reputation for campaigning, but that's really predicated in 15 years ago. It's not on the up curve of international campaign practice anymore. I've been talking to some people who worked in the Obama campaign, and I've got to keep saying that every time I talk to them, I just feel a bit old-fashioned, a bit small-town amateur in comparison to what they do. And we need to start to take some of that more seriously. And I really want to know, and the other thing is, if we aggregate that, I think we will find some very interesting things. If we find that there are very large patches of pro-sympathetic yes votes in no voting areas of Scotland, which if we play it right, we can bring them over, these are the kinds of things that win referendums. So I want to know more, and I want to get on with that as quickly as we can. And yes, some of that's opinion polling, and yes, some of that's focus groups, but a hell of a lot of it's you people on the ground who know this stuff so that we can gather and get it together. I'll come on to how we may get this done in a second. Right, so that's the kind of standard prep that I want to see us get done. The next thing that's really important is none of the things that I've talked about so far win referendums. They can stop you losing, they can help you, but that's not how you win. And if you've any doubt about that, look at everything that's happening in the world right now. Right across the board, everywhere, what is winning is the best story. Now, I'm going to say this in the most assertive way I can. That's always what wins. The best story always wins. Humans think in stories. That's how our heads work. Once upon a time, and then happily ever after. I'm assuming it's not a tragedy. But either way, our minds work in stories. That's how we operate, that's how we think. We think about starting somewhere and finishing somewhere and something in between, taking us between these things. And we tend to support ideas which match best with a story that feels good to us. That feels like it speaks to our experience. That's why Brexit won. You can have all the Institute of Fiscal Studies reports you want, but if you're going to, because remember what the the Rain campaign, I've heard they'll call them. There's a good campaign, you can't even remember what they're called. The Rain campaign, their story was, if it's okay, if you vote Brexit, you're going to lose your workers' rights, and then you'll be starving in the streets and in socks and holes. And they're going to tell us that people are starving in the streets with socks and holes. The story didn't work. The story did not fit the experience of the people who were having that story. Likewise, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's stories were, the machine is a great and ferocious machine that looks after you. You just need the best person to look after the machine and the best person to look after the machine. And too many people say, the machine kind of screwed me over, I don't really like the machine. Who's going to come in and break the machine? And that's what Moron Trump did. I'm going to come in and break the machine. He didn't even know it was a machine. He'd break it just by trying to use it. And that's the story that worked for people. So one of the things which I think we need to get involved in quickly is a debate, a narrative about what story wins for Scottish independence. But I'll tell you something else I want to really emphasise here. We genuinely, like everybody else, in a degree of bubble. You probably know this, but I can promise you that people not far away from us are not thinking about this just now. And they're not talking about this just now. This is not a major part of the lives of people in Scotland at the moment. And again, just to be slightly critical, I feel that the independence story has become a minor character in a different story. Our story at the moment is about Brexit. It's all we talk about. It's all that you see, Brexit, 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 Brexit. And every so often it appears as a kind of side character. And here we go. This is the potential, the character might come in and say this from Brexit, 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 Brexit. We don't have an independent story. And as far as we do, it's rather turning into vote independence to stay exactly the same. Now, that's a bad story. Vote yes, take a big chance so we can be exactly the same as we were 2 years ago. So we need to develop a story. People are sometimes suspicious of my story development because they assume that as a lefty, I will always put my politics ahead of my strategy. I can promise you that I will put my politics ahead of my strategy only so far as it actually works. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to win a socialist Scottish Republic by losing. So I want to emphasise that what I'm trying to do here is discuss the story that I think can actually win, that can gather the maximum number of people and propel them towards a story which works. And the fast version of this is that my impression of how people are feeling about the world at the moment is uncertainty, insecurity, fear, panic, decline and worry. It seems to be the overwhelming feeling. Now, we cannot play to fear. It's a mistake. However, there is a way around this, which is what I've been calling the safe haven narrative. Scotland is safe haven. Now, this is important. This is neither safety, secure, the past is as good as it's going to be, hunker down and keep your fingers crossed. But it's not just another Scotland is possible. And I promise you, as a former radical independent from the last campaign, another Scotland is possible has run its course. That alone isn't enough anymore. We've been seeing that for too long. So we need more narrative than that. And what my belief is that we can, by combining the things I've talked about, we can see that the UK is a failing state. It is not a state which is any longer capable of protecting and providing a safe haven for its citizens. Now, just to unpack this a little bit. Safe for those who are afraid. Haven for those who are not. So if you're worried, you can hear safe, and we can talk about the security of a well-designed banking system that is not going to collapse, the security of a proper tax system which is fair and not being exploited, the security of designing a currency and a central bank, etc., etc., etc. We can talk about that security. We can also talk about the concept of once you have those structures like a windbreak, they create a safe haven in which we can build. In the lee of a better state, in the shelter of a better state, we can create land, firm of foot, where people can build a better future. That concept plays to a small c conservative. We're not going to catch the right one. So, for people who think we can triangulate this to win right-wing voters, we can't. It's not possible. We can't get everybody. It's not, I've said this before, it's not Pokemon. You can't catch them all. Right? You've got to work out who you can catch, and we cannot catch people who think that Murdo Fraser's right. We can't get them. I was going to say something, guys. I'm not being too mocking. I quite like Murdo Fraser. He is independently minded Tory, and there's not that many of them. So I will give him some credit. I quite like Murdo Fraser. But nevertheless, if you believe what Murdo Fraser believes, you're not going to vote yes. And you can't get them. But you can get small c conservative people who are not natural risk takers, who are looking for security. Again, some of the evidence is that older groups particularly feel that. So what we're trying to do just now, one of the things that we're really focusing on in the White Paper project, is how to develop a pension system which looks robust. Really difficult because pension systems aren't robust anywhere in the world these days. But we're trying to find ways to build one that looks maximum robust, and we're looking at a number of options, including a basic income. This is the basic income as a nail-in way to do it. We're probably not going to go with basic income. Probably it's a step too radical for this phase, but nevertheless. So if we can do that, if we can find a combination of saying that by creating a state, and I know that the language of this isn't right yet because people don't feel good about the state. I'm still working on this and trying to get a book, I think, to get my thinking clear. The idea of a state, the structures and institutions of a nation, which can be designed in such a way as to create the safest possible haven for people so they can build a better life for themselves. I think that's the narrative. The best I've come up with, I think it's the best narrative that I can come up with that gathers together 65% of the Scottish population in a story that means something to them. But we need to develop this. A story isn't a story until you've got messaging and tone and understanding and testing. All the rest of the things need to go along with that. And we need to get that stuff done. And once we've done all that, we need to learn the nuts and bolts of campaigning better. I think I'm probably going to skip the white paper stuff, because if I get in, I'll go down that policy rabbit hole. Let me just mention it just now, and then I'll finish off with the other thing. What I found so interesting with the white paper project is I kind of thought we weren't that far off at the last referendum. You know, I looked at the white paper, that's not too bad, that's reasonable. So this thing what we did was we started doing this white paper and I'm trying to work out, it's a very simple question. This shouldn't even be called a week. We're supposed to be kind of innovative, radical, exciting. You're trying to be boring, mundane and normal with this. This is not about how to build a radical state. This is about how to build the best possible functioning state. So we're going through everything here. We're saying not what's exciting and new, but rather, if this was done properly, what would it look like? What would it look like if it was done solidly and properly? What's really interesting is, when you follow that question for each of the areas, we also did, the other thing that we're not doing is repeating the last white paper. This is not a manifesto for Scotland. This is not a big discursive document about all the things that we can do afterwards. This is we're being very strict with ourselves. So this is how you get to day one. So if there is already something in Scottish public life which is operating, it's not in the white paper. This is only filling in the gaps of things which aren't there. We've got an NHS that doesn't mention health. We don't have a tax collection agency, it mentions tax collection agencies, and so on. So this is only the things that are necessary to get us to day one. But when you do that, and the one I'm going to use is the one I've used a couple of times, which is the national insurance number. Okay, could be less interesting, right? It's just a national, it's just a citizen identifier, but we can't use it anymore because those are UK numbers. So what do? Stick in a citizen identifier. Yeah, sure, okay. Right, what we call it? No, hold on, what's it for? Right, what's a citizen's identifier for? What do we have national insurance numbers for, really? What's to identify somebody? What does that mean in the modern world? It's a link to their data. It's a data store. It's about your address, your age, your employer, your income, it's about your health details, it's your data. Right, okay, so it's a data indicator, and it links to somebody's data. How would you design that for the 21st century? Well, you would have a national insurance number, a citizen identifier, which gave you unified single access to all the data that's held about you, and it would put you in control, because that's what we should be doing with our data. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to be working with a group of IT people to explain how we could redesign Scotland's IT systems. And I know that will scare some of you, but we're going to have to if we're going to be independent. And this is what I mean by, let's face it, square up. We cannot not have a major redesign of IT systems, because a lot of IT systems in Scotland are sharing with UK systems. We'll have to redo them. If you were, I think we're almost certainly going to end up within a Scottish currency if we do this. So there's not a single IT system in the country which is equipped to pay in a Scottish currency. So we have to accept these big tasks. But if we're going to do that, we're working to find a way that you don't have to change the front ends, and what you have is a big data store somewhere in a mountain in Scotland, and you as a citizen are capable of accessing all of your data. And who accesses you? So you put your citizen there, and your entire data, every single piece of public data that's stored in you is there, and it's up to you who you share that with. Some of it will be compulsory, so you have to share address details, employer details, income details for tax purposes. Some of it will be conditional. If you wish to be treated by the NHS, you must give them full access to all your medical data, straightforwardly. But if for some reason you don't want it, you certainly don't have to give it to Pfizer or a private company for data. And then you can have all sorts of other opportunities. So suddenly what we've done is we've said, right, what does a national insurance number look like in the modern world? And if we do it right, we can create a system which can reassure nervous, because a lot of people are nervous about how their data is being used, that we can create a 21st century model for how to protect the data of Scottish citizens and yet still make it shareable and effective right across the public sector. And when you suddenly realise that all you have to do is change your postcode, and all your hospital details are updated, and your local authority details are automatically updated, and your tax details are updated. In fact, I can just keep doing that. Everything's updated because the system worked properly. And this is the thing, so let's build a system which means that we've created a Scottish state which genuinely is fit for the 21st century and can create that genuine protection for people going forward. I'd like to also mention citizens' chambers, because I just did a meeting on that, but maybe it'll come up in discussion, because another thing I think would be really useful is if we make this the best possible democracy that we can. Western democracy, I don't think anyone's any longer in doubt that Western democracy has got some inbuilt major problems. What's democracy 3.0 look like? And I think we can do some of that as well. I think we can create a democracy 3.0. We can say again, this is not a home for thugs, this is a home for citizens. And if we can get that kind of narrative out, I think we can build a really strong case. Which takes me to the final thing I think I'm going to say at this point. See what I mean? There's so much to talk about this about. Which is us and our skill sets and how we learn. Let me tell you that story. I was in Berlin a couple of weeks ago talking at a conference, and I was with a Dutch guy who'd spent time in the last Obama campaign. I says, give me a feel for it. What did you do? Right, so this is what they did. Every house had allocated to it an individual volunteer campaigner. They knocked the door. They had a pre-prepared script, which they worked through. Now that script was very flexible, so it didn't feel like a script, but it was very specifically designed to do one thing, two things. One was to draw out whether they were voting Obama or not. And if they weren't, or if they were slithering, what was the one big issue? What was the thing? That was all it was made to do. And it pulled that information out. And then they took that, the whole area, they took that back. Within 7 days, everybody got a specialised, pre-prepared obviously, a specialised detailed briefing leaflet went through their door on whatever the issue was that was the one that they weren't sure about. So if they said, I'm not sure about Obamacare, they got a full detailed leaflet through Obamacare. The person then went back, the same person went back to the same door within 7 days of that and said, did you get that leaflet I sent you through? I sent you through that. And they said, yeah, did it help you? And it didn't really matter what they said at that point, because if they said no, that was fine. And is there anything else? And then they said, well actually I'm still a bit worried about the defence position. They said, oh that's fine, we can go away. And within 7 days they would get the detailed briefing in defence. And they did that until each door said, enough now. I don't want any fucking leaflets, leave me alone. But they worked their way through this until basically they went to the door and the person said, no, I've got all the information I need. At that point they said, thanks, it's been really nice meeting you, it's been really nice talking to you, I won't bother you again. But every single one of those people got a personalised, handwritten postcard within 7 days of that process to say, it was so nice to meet you, it was so nice to have that conversation, I hope that we resolved your concerns over Obamacare and defence. If there's anything else, here's my personal number. These personalised letters are written in giant letter factories. Hundreds of young student volunteers just sitting like little elves, writing letter after letter that's personalised. Now that's just their doorstep job. That's not their social media job. That's not their polling job. That's not their focus group job. That's not all the rest of it. That's what their equivalent of you did. Now, I'm not suggesting that we need to do this. I'm not sure that I can be bothered with that much stuff coming through the door. I'm just indicating that what we thought was tip-top, grade A1, ahead of the curve, there's no such thing. And this is something every one of us can learn. I haven't done direct public campaigning as much as I used to. And I'm learning things I've developed. I'm thinking, we've got to get one more. From that side of the fence, which is really scary. This is related to fundraising, which we're trying to do just now. Do you know that, this is the first part of this will not surprise you. If you give people two messages, one of them is statistical and one of them is personal, the personal message works miles better than the statistical one. So if you say, Rosie lives in poverty, oh, look at me, Rosie, you got wee cheeks and that, oh, right, that really works. If you say, Rosie's one of 37% of the population that live in poverty, it doesn't work. Now that's heartbreaking to me, because I'm kind of keeping this sort of stuff, but nevertheless that's true. Here's the thing, which freaked me out. Do you know that if you put the picture of Rosie in all the Rosie power, and you put a small statistic at the bottom, it decreases its effectiveness. Even if you get that story across, the effectiveness decreases if you turn Rosie into an aggregate or make her less real with a statistic. Now, this is the kind of top-level campaign practice that we are nowhere with in Scotland. There really are very, very, very few strategists in Scotland. And I know because I've been having to go and pick up a lot of this stuff myself. We did the SIC conference and I asked every strategist I do, no, there are strategists we could ask to come and give a talk. There's not that many. And I've got to say that I'm not a fan of the permanent, every time we have a role in Scotland, we give it to somebody overseas. You must have noticed all the first, never SARS about a Scottish accent. But this is one case in which I actually think there may be some merit, and I was phoning America and finding out the most relevant person would be somebody who worked in the social media aspect of the Bernie Sanders campaign. That's the kind of people at a real professional level we should perhaps consider bringing in to cast a fresh pair of eyes on our movement and what it's good at and what it's not good at. What I don't think is a good idea is for us simply to say that we added 15% percentage points during the last referendum and being really nice will manage it again.